I came to see you the other day up in New York, and we talked about the book, and we talked about all sorts of other things related to the book. And one of the things that stood out to me, Bill, was when you talked about how you wrote this book in large part because you wanted to shed light on the heroes themselves and who they were, the main players in the American Revolution. And I have to say, it is just an extraordinary book. Right from the get-go, by the way, you start learning things on page 1 that you would have never known about George Washington and this pillow he had to carry around with him on his horse because he had such bad hemorrhoids and was committed to fighting the fight nevertheless. All of these things that tell you just how passionate these people were about their causes and who they were as people. And you said to me just the other day, Bill, you said they're going to start coming after Jefferson and Washington and all this sort of stuff. And I've said that in the past too, but we didn't quite know when it was going to happen. Well, we learned yesterday that Black Lives Matter protesters in Charlottesville shrouded the Thomas Jefferson statue at UVA and wanted to cover that up, saying that it was inappropriate. They're saying they're basically putting America's history in a burqa, Bill.
Well, I got lucky in the book, Raheem, because which comes out on Tuesday, September 19th, but you can pre-order anywhere. Because we decided to write a book that showed how brutal the struggle was for our freedoms that we have today. But in order to do that, you had to say who George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin actually were as people, as men. And they were like all human beings, some strengths, some weaknesses. But then the radical left started to rise, and there's no question in my mind that it's the Constitution that they ultimately want to overturn. The statues are just a wayside to get to the Constitution. So they're basically saying America's a bad country. White supremacy is how it was established. The Constitution's based on white supremacy. All of this is the belief system of the far left. So they don't ever say it, but that's what it is. So the statues are just symbols. And I said very early on when I saw this controversy in Charlottesville, hey, it's not going to stop with Robert E. Lee or the Confederate generals. This is going to go into the fabric of our country and who we really are as a people, because the far left thinks that we're a bad country. And traditional conservative Americans think we're a noble country. That's always been the struggle. So I urge people to read Killing England to get an idea of what these people were really like, Washington, Jefferson, Franklin. So then you can make an argument, all right, that, hey, just because you were a slave owner back in the late 18th century doesn't negate all the heroic things that you did. And that's the argument. So I'm trying to add some perspective here, and it extends into DACA. It extends into every issue we're dealing with today.
Well, and in Baltimore, the statue, I think, of Francis Scott Key was defaced with the words "racist anthem." Bill, give us your take on where you think these people find their motivations to hate America's history.
It's just, you can't basically say the pathology of the far left or the far right. I mean, because the Nazis hate the country too. You can't basically say it comes from anywhere. It's just the way people are. And to me, though, they used to be marginalized in this country, the fringe, but now the far left fringe has gained traction. And that's what people are seeing, and that's why they're so angry. That's why Trump got elected, because the insanity of saying to the world, America is a bad country based on racism, which is what, the Colin Kaepernick thing is all about. All the controversies we have today stem back from, the original founding of the nation. And the radical left believes that this is a bad country from the jump, and they have to change it into this socialistic communist paradise. That's what the struggle is.
That's what Bernie Sanders is getting at with his new healthcare plan as well. But does this not exist in part because of the vacuum that is being left on the right by Republican leadership on healthcare. They're leaving a vacuum there. Bernie Sanders is trying to fill it. You've seen now the president has this 5-pager that he's expected to sign, written by, they call it a bipartisan thing, where it asks him to condemn extremism and xenophobia and racism and all these sorts of things, and implores him as the head of the country to use all of his and every means available to his cabinet to fight back against this. Well, that is very open-ended, and all these phrases are very open-ended too, Bill. As far as they're concerned, you're a racist, I'm a racist, you're a xenophobe, I'm a xenophobe, you're an extremist, I'm an extremist. This to me is a major assault on free speech, and I'm devastatingly worried for your country that you're going to turn into Europe, the very same thing you tried not to be, as you illustrate in your book, Killing England.
Well, I think people have to realize, number one, how severe the problem has become, and number two, that it's going to take courage to fight it. I mean, I'm the poster boy for that. I've been under attack for 16 years, and finally, these forces of evil and darkness got me. And it was a confluence of events that, someday all of it will be exposed. But people are going to have courage to stand up and say, enough. We don't believe our country is evil. We don't believe that white supremacy rules in the White House. And unless we are willing to do that and make a sacrifice, because when you do that, you're going to be attacked. And that's why, it's important to read Killing England, to see what Washington, in particular, George Washington, went through, the suffering of the man, what he had to go through, all right, to make this revolution a reality. So we all have our mini revolutions here, and we're going to have to stand up and stop this madness. And it is madness. It has reached this point. But the Trump election demonstrated the folks are sick of it, but now the folks are going to have to make individually decisions to speak out against it.
And the folks now are worried. I've got a board full of calls, Bill, and the folks are worried out there that they're not now just fighting the Make America Great Again battle. They're actually now going to have to fight to make Trump great again. There is an incredible outrage out there, and I've heard it all morning, and I've seen it online today as well, about him doing these deals. Now, he says there was nothing firm agreed last night. Chuck and Nancy disagree on DACA, on the Dreamers, on 800,000 people, and I would be remiss of me not to get Bill O'Reilly's take on this. Was there ever going to be anything but?
Look, I want people to step back for a moment and wait until the facts emerge. See, what's happening now, and this is a tactic of the far left, Schumer and Pelosi understand that the fastest way to destroy Donald Trump is to get his base angry at him. That's fact number one. Nancy Pelosi and Charles Schumer want Trump's base to be angry with him and feel betrayed. That's where you start. So any meeting, any dinner, anything, they're going to come out, those two, and spin it like Trump is giving in to us. That's fact number two, which is exactly what they did last night. Okay, we don't know what Donald Trump is going to do about DACA. We don't know. We don't know what the legislation is going to look like. We don't know anything about it. So I would urge your audience to be a little constrained right now and wait and see. Wait and see. Yes, you want the wall. I supported the wall. Trump's going to find a way to secure that border. He's already done a pretty good job down there in 6 months. All right? So give him a little credit for that. Whether it's a wall-to-wall San Diego to Brownsville, it's probably not going to be that, but there's going to be portions of a wall there. On the DACA front, they're not going to deport 800,000 people. That's impossible. It's not going to happen, and it's not fair either. George Washington wouldn't have done it. All right? But there has to be a compromise made wherein these 800,000 are going to have to go through a stringent background check and regulations in order to stay and work. And at the same time, the Democratic Party is going to have to agree that sanctuary cities and all this other business are done. You are going to have to obey federal law. So the compromises can be made. And I would urge everybody who supports Donald Trump to step back a little and see what happens. Remember, Trump has the power. He has the power. He can do executive orders, all right, to make things happen. Pelosi and Schumer don't have it. Well, what Pelosi and Schumer do have is the press. And they play to the press, which gets everybody hysterical.
It's a very interesting and reasoned take, Bill. And I think, over the course of the show, we've had some fairly impassioned calls on this. So I had to ask you, because I knew you'd have.
Sure. But I like that passion. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't like any, blanket insanity. If you think 800,000 people are going to be deported who came here because their parents dragged them here, that's not going to happen. It's not. So accept it. But I think a fair system.
You see, Bill, I don't think people are not accepting it. I think people are willing to accept it if it's tied to the border wall itself.
Absolutely.
But what we're hearing is it's not
I don't know
tied.
If it's going to be border wall per se.
Right, but this is where it gets
that
gray.
That doesn't mean that Trump can't build the wall, because he will. He has to. But it has to be tied to tighter restrictions on illegal immigration. It has to.
Well, Bill, look, we really appreciate Bill O'Reilly, you joining us here this morning. The new book, ladies and gentlemen, Killing England, The Brutal Struggle for American Independence, comes out on Tuesday, September 19th. You can pre-order it now. Bill, I rarely put such a fervent stamp of approval on things. I am putting my big Kassam stamp of approval on this one. Seriously, I have so enjoyed it. And I'm doing a big piece on it, as you know, per our interview last week, doing a big piece on it that should be up on the Breitbart.com website this weekend, a very long form piece on not just the book, but other things we discussed. So, Bill, I just want to thank you, not just for appearing with us here this morning, for having me over the other day, and for writing this brilliant book.
Well, I appreciate you reading it, Raheem, and your review means a lot to me. Thank you very much.